do that and what the experience?
Well, maybe we'll start with the why, I suppose. So I was diagnosed with FA or Friedrichs Ataxia in '07. I was 25. And up until then, had some weird symptoms here and there. But, for all intents and purposes, I was living a normal life and got diagnosed with FA, dual recessive gene. My parents passed it on to me. They're not affected by it. We didn't know anything about it. Symptoms started to show up, went to a doctor a few different times and got diagnosed. And when I sat down with a geneticist who explained the diagnosis and the prognosis, I got to a point where I realized there's a whole lot of life to live in a very short time. FA threatens all kinds of stuff and other ancillary issues, but gait distribution, balance issues, coordination, those are some of the symptoms that I deal with on a regular basis. Scoliosis, a few others. Intense extreme cases can lead to blindness and loss of hearing and eventually a wheelchair, and typically end of life kind of early due to heart disease. So after being diagnosed and facing this prognosis, of course, I'm thinking, man, I just had a doctor tell me that I wouldn't be able to do a lot of things in life that I've always expected to do. And it was in that season of, a few weeks of wrestling with that I realized, man, there's a lot that I can still do right now. And that's what I want to do and conquer the world in a couple of years or free, whatever I have left. Let's see what we can do. So Kyle and I became friends. We lived in the same city at the time. And of course, getting on the internet, Googling my condition, this guy and some of the stuff that he had done over the months leading up to my diagnosis put him in local news. So tracked him down on Facebook or whatever it may have been back then. And we became friends. We shared this interest of doing everything we can while we can. That we understand that there we'll all face challenges, right? Whether it's a spinal cord injury or loss of a job or loss of a loved one or just bad relationships or whatever it may be. So we've conquered adventures like the race that you talk about in spite of our conditions or our circumstances. And part of the reason why we chose that race is because it is recognized as the world's toughest bike race. You might think Tour de France is pretty tough, and I won't argue it is, but they also race in stages. So the big difference between Tour de France and RAM, or what's Race Across America, they're both roughly 3,000 miles, but Race Across America is nonstop. You're up against the clock the entire time. So part of the reason why we chose that one, A, it's our backyard, it's America. And B, we knew it was going to be tough.
Yeah.
And we had something to prove, I guess.
You had something to prove. How long after your diagnosis did the race occur?
For me, it was 3 years.
Okay.
For Kyle, who kind of really spearheaded the race itself, I'm going to say 10 or 13 years after a diagnosis for him.
And what kind of training was involved?
A lot of riding. That's their first time everyone's doing something at that level. So I committed about 6 months out from the race. So it wasn't even that long. Most people are going to train for a year for something like that. I joined the team in December. The race was in June. So it was nonstop with the goal of trying to ride 300 miles a week, but also realizing that you're gonna do that every day in spurts or in shifts. So I don't know that my training was the best plan, but it worked. Yeah, exactly. If I were doing it today, I would probably train differently.
Okay. So the other two members, you guys all came together and
they're friends of ours, fully abled, amazing cyclists. One really good friends of Kyle, another one a really good friend of mine. So we just reached out to them and said, "Hey, we're gonna do something stupid. Do you want to tag along. And of course, without hesitation, they agreed to race, and they really carried the weight. It was on a recumbent bike for a trike or for Kyle at the time, and me, a slow rider, and I couldn't ride a straight line if I tried hard. So we were the slowest one, so we knew we needed a couple strong riders to make sure we hit that clock.
Okay. So can you give us some insight as to what the race was like physically, and then after that, maybe what the race was like, mentally or spiritually for you?
She mentioned it, or Susan mentioned the film, and I would love it if everybody went and saw it. You can get it online, Amazon, Google Play. I think even iTunes has a version. It's only a couple of dollars to rent it, or a few extra dollars to buy it. And the film itself captures a lot of the emotion that goes into it. But I think one thing that sticks out to me emotionally or even physically is how nonstop it was. And when I think about life in a wheelchair or life with limitations, in a sense, that's kind of how it is. It's nonstop. Maybe as an athlete or a cyclist, you get to take a break, or you get to turn the page and move on to something else. But I can't turn the page on my condition, and a lot of big people can't go back and remove the cancer diagnosis or the injury that they suffered or whatever else is going on. So emotionally, that's what we wrestled with, at least Kyle and I, every day. We knew that today was going to be hard, but the correlation of tying that into somebody else whose disease is further progressed, or whose injury is a lot more devastating, was something we were trying to find a way to relate to, in a sense, and also accept in our own realities. Kyle is much further progressed than me, living in a wheelchair, and that's my prognosis down the road. So I mentally try to find ways to find a way to relate to that or connect with that.
Okay, thank you for that. Yeah. So I like that analogy that you have about how it's nonstop. Being in a wheelchair or with a progressive disease, it is going to be nonstop. So what have you learned since your diagnosis that helps you to keep
moving?
Yeah, keep moving. Keep on.
That's a good question, and I'm happy to hang out there for a long time, because when a doctor tells you life is different than what you expected, it takes a minute to wrap your head around that. And I can only imagine, in the moment, I didn't have the same concerns that other people have that maybe are dealing with an injury out of nowhere, a car accident or something of that nature. And my progression, I've seen it coming, right? It's like you think about being stuck on the railroad tracks, and you can see the train coming in, and it's gonna hurt when it hits you. That's a bit morbid or extreme, but I think about movies in that regard. At least with my condition, I've seen some things unfold, or I've seen it coming, and I've sort of expected next year is going to be harder than this year. And it's in accepting those realities that I've really had to wrestle with this idea that there's always going to be a reason to get out of bed, even though that reason is going to change. It's going to be different for each of us. And as my condition progresses, my own purpose is going to be redefined on a regular basis. My involvement is going to be redefined on a regular basis. But I am a proponent of that belief that as long as you're waking up, there's life to live. A lot of people complain about having a bad day, and you might hear the phrase, "Oh, they just woke up on the wrong side of the bed." And I've never believed that a wrong side of the bed exists. If you woke up, then life is good. may not be easy. And there's definitely going to be days that are harder than others. But I believe that if I'm breathing, I have work to do. And I have no idea what that's going to look like 5 years from now. And I have no idea what it looks like for you. But if we got life in us, there's something to contribute to the world around us. And that's sort of what keeps me moving forward despite, whatever limitations I'm up against.
Right. Knowing that you have limitations and limitations will continue
Mhm.
throughout. Yeah.
Yeah. And they're going to get worse, in my case,
Yeah.
or supposedly.
Mhm. Now, how long ago you were diagnosed when you're 25? So you don't have to tell us your age, but you've probably seen or experienced a change in how people now know more about Friedrichs Ataxia, or how there's more support in any kind of disability, and how has that helped you?
Good question. For me, I never thought about injury or disease until I was diagnosed. It was never a part of family or the community I was a part of. So all of it was new to me. And seeing how things over the years have changed, whether you're talking legislation or awareness, different organizations coming along and finding ways to give people access to medicines or therapies, and even medicines that come along that didn't exist 10 years ago or even 3 years ago, which has been incredibly motivating and powerful, because I think there's an answer for everything somewhere in the world. We just need some incredible minds to find the answer and put it together, right? Maybe a terrible example, I'm not a scientist, but the vaccine for COVID, the answer has been there. We just humanity had to come against this limitation in order to turn all the rocks over and to dig into, okay, what answers do we have and how can we pivot them or use them to create something to combat this condition or this pandemic. And for me, seeing just even little bits of increase in awareness, or mostly awareness, has been life changing, because shoot, even for my condition, it was late 90s before they even identified the science behind what caused FA. And so to be, fast forward 24 years, it's still a new baby of a condition that's being looked at.
Yeah.
I don't know if that answers your question.
No, definitely that does. Yes. And I know that there is some news now about possibilities of medication testing to help.
There's lots of different therapies in trial right now. We have one it's gotten farther with the FDA than any other therapy before, not curative, but an amazing potential to help combat some symptoms. And then, of course, gene therapy, that tends to be kind of the token for most conditions. And there's several therapeutics that are designing their trials right now. So we're hopeful in the next year or two that there's some progress in that world.
Yeah, that would be amazing. So you likened it to seeing like that train coming down the track, like it's inevitable that you are progressing in with FA. So do you think that really made some decisions and changes in maybe how you're living your life now as compared to if you never had a diagnosis?
Oh yeah,
different things you're doing,
absolutely.
The way your attitude is.
There's a heightened sense of urgency, because life isn't always going to be the way it is today, or won't always be easy, or maybe it won't be as long. And we were talking briefly over lunch with a few. I was never athletic. I was never really into pushing the boundaries physically, But when somebody told me I wouldn't be able to climb stairs or ride a bike safely or walk on my own, that just changed my perspective a little bit and pushed me toward this lifestyle of doing everything I can while I can, because that's going to change inevitably. So had it not been for the diagnosis, who knows? I might still be, or I might just be somewhat of a sloth at home, not really doing a whole lot or pursuing much. And I think I would regret that way of living. I still have some regrets, and I wish I would have tried a little harder or worked a little harder. But I also know that, man, I push more limits than most able-bodied people will ever do, and there's got a strong sense of pride in that.
Yeah, no, you really see, we all inevitably will not be here one day, and we all don't know when that's going to be or how that's going to be, what's going to happen. So you do definitely have that perspective of seeing it and knowing that and taking control of your life, whereas even though we all know where we're going to end up, we might not do that.
Yeah.
And in some ways, maybe that's a gift for you to really squeeze everything out of life.
Yeah.
With your relationships, with your personal beliefs, and all of your everything that you want to do and see and experience.
I think about it in terms of anybody, pursuing maybe an acting career or business or becoming a doctor or even a professional athlete. I heard somebody say not so long ago, and maybe others know the story. Kobe Bryant, as a young child, had one of the worst summers ever, didn't score any shots, and he was pretty bummed about that. He was not good on the court, and his dad just kept pushing him, kept believing in him, and telling him to give it your all. And of course, today his legacy is one of the best ball players to ever grace our lifetime, right? With basketball. And to be at that kind of level of, I'm going to do everything I can while I can, I think help put him in that arena with the professionals and put him on the map. And if we think about how, if you or Sean or anybody else listening did that with their hobby or their gardening or their grandchildren or baby, whatever it is, if they picked something in life and gave it everything they had, how awesome would that one thing be? You could think of Amazon and shoot, I'm forgetting the guy's name right now, but Jeff Bezos, however you say it. I don't really know what his vision was 20 years ago, but he didn't start Amazon as we know it today. That's evolved over time because he kept leaning into what he believed could work. And you could argue different employment practices and business ideas, but 25 years ago it was just an idea, and had he not leaned into it, well, you and I, it wouldn't be as easy as it is today to get something delivered to your front door
in 2 days.
Yeah.
No, that is so true. That is so true. So you are definitely not a sloth. I know you said maybe you would be if FA wasn't in your life, but now you are super busy. You have founded your own nonprofit, Determinants. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
And what I love being here at QLI and touring their facility and seeing what you guys are doing, because honestly, there's a piece of my vision that wants this in another part of the world, and I'm moved by what you guys are doing here. The nonprofit I started was launched to help other people in my not condition, but in my circumstances and similar, get out and do something crazy exciting or crazy adventurous. I believe that there's a lot of beauty in feeling accomplished and a lot of pride in that. When you can go out and cross the finish line on your own power, there's something compelling and empowering about that. So Determinants is the name of the organization. It's a hybrid, a made up word of determination and resilience, which I love seeing all over your material as well. The idea is to do what we can to help somebody with limitations physically cross the finish line or climb a mountain, whether that's finding the equipment that's going to help them do so. Maybe it's finding them some muscle, and you think of the Hoyt team or Team Hoyt, father and son, the dad pushed the chair and the wheel and the bikes and whatever it could, but the son also was experiencing the triumph on himself. So that's what we aim to do: help people cross finish lines and experience that triumph under some level of their own power.
Excellent. Excellent. That's so gratifying to, I'm sure, everyone involved.
Yeah, it's pretty powerful. We're still pretty small and we don't have quite the impact that GLI has on any degree. But even just one person, helping them get to the top of a mountain or run a long distance marathon or race is
It's impactful.
impactful.
Yeah, that's excellent. So you have keynote speaker, because I know that you do travel around or Zoom now.
Yeah, right now a lot of
Mostly
Zoom.
It's been Zoom. And Determinants, and you and Kyle host.
We do a podcast together. Especially after the film came out. The film took 5 years to produce. We had some amazing filmmakers tag along on the bike race, and they produced an incredible film. And I'm biased, but it's amazing, and I'm only in it a little bit, but after the film, we did some touring and would show up at different festivals and do all kinds of talks and Q&As with the film, and we just realized that so much of the story and the principles behind the adventure and the challenge is something that you can talk about on a regular daily basis. And we saw an opportunity for Kyle and I to really continue the conversation of the principles that you see in the film every day. So we had the idea of starting a podcast, and we've been doing that now for 5 years.
5 years also. It's Two Disabled Dudes.
Yeah.
That is the name of the podcast. You can all look it up.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah. And I really loved when you guys sat down and talked about like writing letters to yourselves, like back.
Yep. Yeah, that was a fairly recent episode. We wrote letters to the younger versions of Kyle and Sean, our pre-diagnosed or just diagnosed selves. And without boring the audience today, I've worked through a lot of trauma in my life, not all physical, but emotional, mental, and career related. There's been a lot of change that I didn't see coming, even outside of physical health. And in dealing with therapists and psychologists, part of the exercises of working through the changes we all face was journaling and writing letters to different versions and different stages of life. So we applied one of those principles to a recent episode, writing letters to 25-year-old Sean, who was just diagnosed, and trying to find ways to encourage that young man that even though that diagnosis is tough to swallow, now fast forward 15 years and life's not over. There's still something to be gained and something to be given. And that was the point of those letters, as encouraging our younger selves to keep moving forward.
Yeah, I thought it was excellent. Yeah, that you definitely should check that episode out because you really spoke of resilience. You talked about, you didn't sugarcoat things how they would be, but you talked really about resilience. Like this is what life is going to look like, and it will, you find ways to adapt.
Sure.
That's something you really believe in.
Yeah.
Is having the freedom to make the choice of how you live your life and how you overcome your circumstances.
Yeah, I love that you use the word adapt, And that's what I'm enjoying about seeing what QLI is doing, because we're all going to have to adapt at some degree or at some level. And I'm grateful for organizations like this one that introduce equipment or people or muscle or whatever we can do to adapt a limitation or challenge. I just started using the walker that I'm using today this year. And I was always hesitant, even though I've fractured many bones leading up to that from different falls. I was always hesitant because I thought, in a sense, it was robbing me of some independence. And what I've come to realize is that walker increases my independence. Now I don't need somebody to carry my stuff for me. Now I don't need to be worried about other people looking at me and judging me and thinking I'm drunk or whatever is going through their head. I actually feel like it's safer, so it's just smarter. But I also feel more independent using a walker than I had felt a year ago not using one.
That's really interesting. It actually gives you access to
Mhm.
more opportunities.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, good point.
So,
Access that maybe would have avoided it 8 months ago because the walk was 20 feet or whatever it may have been. It was a crowded area. I can't judge the way people are going to move in a public setting like a Target or a grocery store. And if somebody stops right in the middle of a walkway or they come around the corner too fast, I don't have the ability to stop abruptly or brace myself. Well, with a walker, I do. So it's safer and it's easier to navigate the nuances of day-to-day living.
yeah. And I think that's a reason probably why your podcast, one of the reasons why the podcast is so important. If you have people in the community that may have similar circumstances to yours, or they're dealing with maybe some kind of physical limitation, they can hear firsthand from someone like yourself or Kyle that talks about, gosh, I resisted this and because of these reasons, and now it has opened up a whole new.
I feel like that's a sentiment we hear quite often. Somebody puts off using a wheelchair, puts off whatever adaptations exist and could be helpful to them. And in hindsight, they regret waiting so long. So what's been empowering for me and impactful is all these different interviews we do, hearing how other people have walked through these stages of life already and giving me some advice without even trying to give me advice. It's just when you realize somebody else can do it, or when you recognize somebody else can do it, you begin to realize, okay, maybe I can do it too.
Yeah.
Maybe a different way, but
yeah, they share you either see it or they're sharing what their experience was in just conversation.
totally.
Yeah.
And even if I can't glean off exactly what worked for them, it definitely helps generate ideas and you start to get creative. Maybe you adapt something and try it with little tweaks here and there. And if it wasn't for those conversations, I'd still be thinking the world's against me or life is going to be too hard.
Yeah. Gosh, well, Sean, I am so glad that you're coming to visit us today. QLI, we love guests.
Awesome.
Especially now since we haven't been able to have quite as many with COVID, and we love to learn. I'm sure there's some questions.
I'm not gonna lie, before you pass it over, I don't understand why y'all are in Omaha. California would be an incredible place, and I would show up more often. But I would volunteer.
QLI West. Let's do it. So I don't know how to open up questions, so I'm hoping that John Pearson or someone in the other room can come in and help us out and see if we have anyone here that wants to chime in and they have something that they either want to share with Sean or that they want to ask.
So I was able to pull up chat. No questions yet.
Okay.
Perfect. but certainly,
Hi.
How's it going?
I'm on your time. So if there's any conversational pieces or questions that I can
You should able
be a
to see
part
the
of.
Oh,
chat
I think,
right here.
I think
There's the chat right
Sean
there.
just pulled it.
Yeah.
Okay,
There you go.
all right.
Last one I'm reading is how hard it was to hear you.
Yeah, I know it. Did you get the message? You
I
see my
did get
phone?
the message.
I-
I'm
that was-
sorry.
I don't know who
Usually-
helped set this tech up, but whoever did it messed it up. That would be me.
Usually
this
I
mic's
talk
not
so
working.
loud and too much.
So I turned the mic way down.
Now, now I have the opposite problem.
Yeah, for some reason your mic's not coming through and I don't know. So, but you were projecting
I'm good
nicely.
now. Okay.
So yes,
Awesome.
if there are questions.
I think I'm seeing two. So we're just so I don't lose them, more pop up. The first one, the name of the film, it's called The Ataxian. Heaxian. The Ataxian.
And is it Netflix that has it now? I can't
No,
remember.
it's video on demand.
Video on demand,
So you're gonna find it on platforms like Google Play, iTunes, and I believe Amazon. In fact, if you just went to Amazon, typed in The Ataxian, they'll link you to different ways you can download it.
Okay, perfect.
And I gotta read. So next adventures. Yeah, I've got a couple, like most people experiencing a slowdown in life due to COVID. We put off some of our crazy adventures, but right now we've got on the books a long distance run. We put a team of 12 together and we do a 158-mile run around Lake Tahoe. We lean on that as a fundraiser, although I do participate. My legs are mostly walking, so I get some of the short legs, otherwise we'll not finish on time. That's also a timed race. And then one of my personal bucket list, but also a campaign for determinants, is to climb the California 14s. So we're looking at a couple of those next year as well.
Awesome. We got a couple more. I hope you got a chance to see our CrossFit adaptive gym.
Is that where I was?
Oh,
No,
we
I-
didn't get over there.
Yeah, that's over in our facilities area.
Okay, so I got to see is it Lead
Yeah.
family
Yeah,
or
the
Lead
the
Center?
Life Center.
Yeah.
And seeing the trikes in there and the
Yeah.
kayaks on the wall, even some pretty pretty badass wheelchairs like that. Seeing some of that, it's impressive. And that's if I as determinants, the idea is to help people all over the place. So if I ever have the opportunity to come help somebody in Nebraska do something cool, I'm calling you guys to help me out.
Oh, yes,
We'd
that's
love to have
awesome.
you.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah. The grit adaptive fitness is in our facilities or garage. So you
Okay.
have the garage and it's got all the equipment and yeah, it's a really cool CrossFit.
I heard a little bit
adaptive
about
CrossFit.
it.
Yeah, it's
So.
really cool. So, and the adaptive sports. I don't know if you got a chance to meet Ed.
No,
who is our-
unfortunately, we missed Ed.
Okay.
Yeah,
But
he's great. He articulates that program much better than I could, but you would really appreciate that. He talks about that maybe somebody comes in and after they're done with the rehab, maybe they're not going to go kayaking again, but when they see the kayak, they may think, well, I can't do that.
Yep.
And then they get in the kayak and they do it.
They realize,
and then that proves what else are you saying you can't do, because
Sure.
now you have evidence that shows you can actually do
Yeah.
that. And so it's just it just opens up
Yep.
this portal of I've got to stop saying I can't because and start saying I could if.
Remove some barriers.
Yeah, so
for sure.
So it's a great vehicle for that.
another question popped up, Sean.
What symptoms did you experience prior to being diagnosed, and how long did you have those symptoms? I didn't realize there were symptoms until a diagnosis came. Then, of course, you look back and you can kind of make sense of it all. But in college, I began to realize, my friends and I, we just make fun of the fact that I couldn't walk straight. I was, walking across campus through the quad. I was all over the sidewalk, bumping into people and walls and whatnot. And it was never an inner ear thing. So I never felt dizzy or couldn't see it. Just my legs wouldn't go quite where I told them to go. And it was fatigue that really sent me to the doctor years later, because it's energy deprivating, and I don't even know if that's a real word, but FA just sucks the energy out of you. Most people with FA find it hard to just get out of bed or make it through an 8-hour, 9-hour, 10-hour day. And that was bugging me, because I'm not, I don't like being tired all the time.
You
It's
don't like being a
frustrating.
sloth, huh?
Yeah, exactly.
I have a question, and I don't know if there's other ones, but if I heard you right, I was bouncing back and forth. That recessive gene that from your parents, but neither parent has ataxia or had
Correct.
ataxia. Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I just wondered, like, what were that had to obviously been a shock to you, but much different if one of the parents, if you knew,
knew
what
about
the
it, sure.
chances are. So just there, we serve families here, and they're all coming to grips with what happened. It doesn't happen in isolation; it happens to a whole family.
Totally.
So, yeah, I was just curious of what that dynamic was like.
The
and how they-
the family dynamic of the diagnosis is still something you work through even today. But it was devastating. I would imagine as parents, you're like, what? I couldn't, no way. It's impossible. Because they're both, recessive genes, so neither one of them even knew about it. And that's the way it is with FA in most rare conditions. You don't even know it existed. So you wouldn't know to test for it or to do exams or blood drops or whatever, because it's not common. Sure, it's easy to pre-screen for maybe cancers or diabetes, even some things that are a little more common, if you will, but you would never even think to look for a rare condition if there's no family history, which is the way it was. And in my family, it's just been carried for probably generations, but most carriers, you're just not affected, so you would never know that's even there.
So it was quite a surprise.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I imagine, I'm not a parent, but I know it was hard for them.
Sure.
Because, they feel, in a sense, I'm sure there's a level of guilt maybe, or, whatever else might come with that. Parents can probably certainly relate deeper than I can, but I know it wasn't easy.
Yeah. And so you said that you met Kyle through like doing search online, because he had been in the local news.
Mm-hmm.
So is that something that you did right after your diagnosis, that you sought out?
I did. And I don't know exactly where this comes from, because I know a lot of people, my brother suffers a spinal cord injury, and he's still, it was only a year and a couple months ago, 14, 15 months ago, and he's still, every day questioning a lot. And I've met other people with FA and other MS and ataxias and different symptoms or issues. And I feel like the overlying approach is a few months, few years before you begin to really even look at that. And I don't know where it came from for me, but that night I was looking for ways to work around that prognosis.
Mhm.
And that's always something I've leaned on as I think it's a James Bond film, right? No Time to Waste or something like that, probably, or it should be a James Bond film.
Sounds like it could be, yeah.
You got a bond. I think you could totally be in that.
Well, I think too that we want to connect with people, right? Like we like to have things in common with others, and so to know that you're not alone.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
In this diagnosis, especially since it's rare.
Yep.
There's an extra layer when it's something that not a lot of people have.
Yep.
So to be able to learn more and connect and know that other people are going through really pretty close to the same situation that you are.
And I think that's what makes life significant for all of us, right? Whether you're up against an injury or rare disease, or just up against having terrible neighbors, when you realize you're not the only one and you can find people to relate with and connect with and work through those challenges and nuances and hard things and easy things, that just gives a deeper level of purpose to what we're doing, and you can see what's possible.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. There's always something to learn, right?
Yeah,
Someone
yeah,
always
absolutely.
knows something that you don't.
Yeah, is that Bill Nye?
No, I don't know.
Oh, okay.
That's
And
yeah,
he
I don't
he
know.
said something
I
similar.
don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've heard that before. I
Yeah,
don't know where it came from, but
it's a common sentiment, right? Everybody knows something you don't.
Yeah.
And depending on how you approach conversations or people, there's something to learn.
yeah, which is exciting.
Yeah.
I'm so glad that you're sharing all this with us today. So for the Ataxia event tomorrow, just so people know, I think we have about maybe 20 QLI team members in
Wonderful.
attendance. Yeah,
right.
which is excellent. And there may still be some seats left. If anyone wanted to purchase some seats, they can go to nebraskaataxia.org. And yeah, Sean, we're so excited
Awesome.
for you to present tomorrow
Thank you.
as well.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah,
It's,
I think it'll be a fun event. Yeah. And we're glad we got to share QLI with you.
absolutely. I'm glad you did. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so
Because
much.
it's a tremendous work that you're doing here. I love it.
Yeah.
My experience with rehab is much different. I took a fall a couple of years ago and broke my femur, and was in inpatient for about a month, and it was great. But this is awesome.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah,
Thanks.
I'm pretty proud.
Yeah.
As you should be.
So I know a lot of people are in Zoom. If anybody has a question, you can always get it over to myself or Michelle or John, and we can get in touch with Sean. And I want to thank Pat and the leadership team for their support and their support of Nebraska Ataxia. And that is how Sean was able to join us for the event tomorrow evening and for this today.
thank you.
Thank you for taking the time
and our
out to
table too, and
come
our
and see us.
VIP
Yeah, the
table,
VIP table that we have is from QLI. So
Awesome.
yeah, thank you, Pat and leadership, for your support.
Awesome.
Yeah. So
Awesome.
yeah.
Well,
right.
seriously, guys,
Yeah.
back to work.
Hey,
We
yeah,
got work to do.
that's right.
Let's go.
Just sit down and talk about it.